So let's go ahead and talk about Mondstadt real quick, because I feel like that area is very symbolic from both a player's perspective and from a developer's perspective. Obviously, from a developer's perspective, they have the freedom to make all the male characters that they want. They would have had a problem with doing that in Honkai Impact 3rd. From a player POV perspective, this freedom, you're traveling across all these different regions and areas. You're getting to meet all these different characters. You have the freedom to put together a wide spectrum of party compositions. Take it into Spiral Abyss and have success. If you don't want to do Spiral Abyss, you don't have to. You could do co-op with people if you want. You could just do some role playing if you want. You can just have the characters just to be a collector. There is no inherent single way of approaching the game. You're not limited to being in a box and forced to play the game in a certain way, because you're given that level of freedom. So when people are so haphazardly pushing for this quote unquote meta and trying to restrict what people do and peer pressure them and whatnot, I feel like it really goes against the game's design philosophy, because at the end of the day, the game is a very freedom-based game, very casual, very chill game. Now, I think there's a couple of things that have contributed to this quote-unquote meta thing being such a big issue within Genshin Impact, even though it is a single-player game, even though there's not really forced group content, even though there aren't significant rewards locked behind any type of PvP. And there's two primary reasons. I think the first one is because of when this game was released. It released in 2020 during the time when COVID was like kicking off, being real bad. Places were being locked down. People were obviously not able to go out and travel. They weren't able to hang out with their friends. They weren't able to hang out with their family in a lot of cases. And so they had a bunch of free time. So what they would some of them ended up doing is they would pick up other video games. In this case, Genshin Impact. And so people, instead of finding that conformity in their normal day-to-day lives, they're finding that conformity within certain groups within Genshin Impact. But to some extent, this can be kind of dangerous, because what ends up happening is that some of these people have created echo chambers where everyone's a yes man, where everyone's agreeing with what they're saying. And I think another aspect of it is because of the way that the internet is. The generation that's coming up behind me, a good number of them were raised by the internet. That's not my opinion. That's just a reality. A good number of the people, the generation that's coming up behind me, were literally raised by the internet. Their social standards, their decision-making process, internet. And I've seen this play out so many times. Literally just talking with a person like the other day, and they were narrowing down decisions, and then they decided to set up a poll, and they were like, well, whoever gets the most votes, this is the character that I'm gonna pull for. Which was wild to me, because I was thinking to myself, hold up, you're gonna let random people make a decision on what character that you pull for. This is your account. This is something that you're logging into and playing on a day-to-day basis, and you're not able to make that concluding decision for yourself. I never understood that. I can never wrap my head around it. But then when I thought about it, it's like the internet has removed a lot of the thinking process for a lot of people. They go online, they type something in, boom, there's the answer. A lot of people don't have to really think about the things that they're doing, because the internet just provides them with the answers automatically, to where a lot of the guesswork, a lot of the thinking process just gets completely removed from the equation whatsoever. And I think another effect of the internet is a lot of people, they feel like if I'm the loudest person, or if I'm saying the most outlandish things, I'll get the most attention. And there is a little bit of truth in that, truth be told, because I feel like someone who has an extreme rhetoric, whether it's in the positive or the negative of a character, is probably going to get a lot more attention than the person who has a more balanced viewpoint and is like, hey, here's the pros, here's the cons, this is what I think of the character. At the end of the day, at least for myself, this doesn't really create a good environment to have discussions. It just ends up being a big tug of war when you have people from both extremes of the camp, the ones who are the quote unquote meta camp, and the ones on the other end of the extreme that are like, hey, play whatever you want. And there ends up being harassment that goes both ways. And harassment is not okay in any capacity within this game, because again, it's a very chill game. It's not that serious. It really isn't. And I would definitely say specifically for the people that are part of the quote unquote meta camp, I feel like these are the same kind of people who are blowing the situation way out of proportion. I feel like these are the very same type of people who would get the bulletproof vest. They would make sure they would have their grenades. They would have their steel-toe boots. They would make sure they had their katana. They would make sure they had binged watch Naruto, Shippuden, and learn how to use Sharingan in all different forms. And they would be the same kind of person who would get in a fighter jet ready to blow up whatever's underneath the bed because they have the belief that there's the Boogie Man that's underneath the bed. And if they don't play the game in a quote unquote meta fashion, the Boogie Man is going to get them. But there is no Boogie Man underneath the bed. It's all in their head. A lot of these people have made themselves out to be their own worst enemy. And from my POV, that's on the outside looking in, a lot of these people are not complacent with just playing the game that they in the fashion that they're playing it in. They want as many people as possible to play the game the way they're playing it, to validate their decision making, to validate why they got a character or skipped a character. And I would definitely say that Genshin Impact is a single player oriented game. And while there is the option of co-op on there, 95% of the time it's not even a forced requirement. You don't have to do it most of the time if you don't want to. So I guess my TLDR is, who really cares who you're playing and who you're using? It doesn't inherently matter. As long as you are personally enjoying the game, that should be satisfactory enough. People don't need to try to conform other people or guilt trip them into playing the game in the exact same fashion that they're doing. And the wild thing about Spiral Abyss is that it's not a high priority as of right now for MiHoYo to even focus on it. I feel like the Teapot has gotten more quality of life updates than Spiral Abyss. And honestly, I could understand why, because of the simple fact that they probably are looking at their statistics and they probably see that there's a pretty large percentage of players that don't even touch Spiral Abyss plus floor 8. They don't even do 9 and 10. So these people that are trying to enforce a quote unquote meta, MiHoYo's not even on the same wavelength as a lot of you. Sure, in Spiral Abyss, there have been a lot of blessings that have been Dendro based buffs. They want to encourage you to use those said blessings to their full advantage by using Dendro in some capacity. But I can tell you from my own personal experience on F12, you don't have to use Dendro. It's just heavily encouraged. The way that MiHoYo has this game set up, they can continue to make profit off of their characters for years. When Klee has her 10th rerun in the future, if somebody wants to get her because they find her to be an adorable, huggable character and they want to take her to Spiral Abyss floor 12 and have some success, they still have that ability to do that. There's a difference between a character in a game that is getting low sales because they're just old and most people already have that said character versus the character being deemed not viable. If a character is just old, that means MiHoYo can continuously make money off of that old character for years. But if they completely adhere to a quote unquote meta, they're now having some of these old characters become dead weight in the water to where they're no longer making money for the company. And while yes, adhering to a quote unquote meta might give them more money in the short run, it's not going to help their pocketbook in the long run, because now they're going to end up in a very similar situation with Honkai Impact 3rd. In Honkai Impact 3rd, not every character is viable. There are certain characters that if they did a banner for today, they would get no sales because the character is deemed not viable. It would be the same thing with Genshin Impact, and that's definitely not what MiHoYo wants to do with this game. So when people try to super push for this quote unquote meta stuff, it doesn't help MiHoYo. It doesn't help the player base, because when a player becomes so restrictive in the team comp building that they're doing, they tend to get more frustrated with the game because they're playing the same comps. There are literally people online that are tired of playing Bennett and Zhang Ling and they wanted something different. But yet these very same players never took the steps to move away from using the Bennett and the Zhang Ling combo. And it's their own fault at the end of the day. They chose to stick on that path instead of trying to branch out and play different things, so they get bored of the game even faster than some other players who have expanded out their horizon a little bit and have a little bit of this and that. So, in Honkai Impact 3rd, miHoYo's other hit game, there is actually a meta. It is actually highly relevant, and you don't have to follow it, but it is something that you have to respect, because if you don't, in the long run, you lose out on rewards. Now, if you're somebody who's just playing for the storyline, and you don't care about anything else, that's fine to an extent, but if you're somebody who's trying to get characters, you have to at least respect that meta in Honkai Impact 3rd, or you lose out on rewards in the long run, which means it's going to take you longer to get characters. That's just how it is. And of course, there's a pay to win element to it as well. I want to make sure I put that in there. Let me give you an example. SSS Memento Sakura, OG Ice DPS, right? Versus Hado in Memorial Arena. Maybe this could be in Abyss. Type counter advantage, all right? She will lose out to an S rank Hersher of Ego. That's a psychic type, 30% type counter disadvantage. So that means that she is losing out on 30% of her damage when she's fighting this target. And Hersher of Ego will still pull ahead. That's how big the power gap is between those two characters. You don't have that problem in Genshin Impact. Character tier lists in Genshin Impact don't mean anything to me, because I know at the end of the day, every single character is viable. Every single character can be used in some way, shape, or form to help somebody get 36 star in Spiral Abyss, as long as the person knows what they're doing and they have the skill to pull it off. And the respective device, because I understand some phones got real bad lag issues and whatnot, or maybe somebody's got bad internet and they got ping issues, but assuming those aren't issues, as long as they got the skill and they know what they're doing with team building, they'll be fine. And for example, if somebody wants to use Keqing for helping them get 36 star in Spiral Abyss, they can do that. They can also use Raiden Shogun and help them get 36 star as well. Yes, Raiden Shogun is a better character than Keqing, but both of those characters can help lead the player to the same end result. Me, on my account, I don't spend any money on this game. I'm going to get the same 36 star in Spiral Abyss as the person who spent $10,000 on the game and completed each side in like 20 seconds. The game doesn't recognize your heavy amount of spending, and it doesn't reward you for that heavy amount of spending. All it does is, at the end of the day, is allow you to get those rewards just a little bit sooner, but the end result is the same way. Now, I know there's going to be pushback on my character tier list comment, so I'll go ahead and address it right now, because somebody's going to say something along the lines of, I value character tier list because I don't want to pull a bad character in this game. No, you want to try to pull a quote unquote good character for the sake of covering up your skill issues. There are a lot of people that have built up their accounts to the point to where they're completely capable of getting 36 star in Spiral Abyss, able to go to floor 12, get their 9 star, but yet they can't do it because either A, they're not good at putting together team comps, or B, they have no sense of strategy. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Rather, somebody likes to unga boonga, they're not paying attention to enemy weaknesses and taking advantage of it, whatever the case may be. There have been countless examples of some random person getting their account, taking it to Abyss, and getting 9 star on floor 12 with the same account. It's a skill issue. Having good characters on your account alone means nothing. If you don't know how to utilize those characters, you're not going to have the level of success that you think you're going to have. And let me give you an outside example, just to better clarify my point. Somebody has a toolbox and there's like 50 different tools in it, right? And these tools can be used to complete a job. But what the person only decides to do, they only decide to use the hammer to complete the project. And then the project falls apart because they only used the hammer. Is it the toolbox's fault that the user only used the hammer to try to get the job done and it fell apart? Or do we blame the user? I think most people would blame the user and not the toolbox. And another issue with character tier lists in general is that there is no universal metric for the said tier list. What one person values, another person could completely neglect and give no value to. There's just no consistency. And it does remind me of one more thing. There has been multiple times where a character has come out, a lot of the vocal community screams bloody murder, this said character is the worst character that miHoYo has ever released, and then in the long run, these characters, for one reason or another, end up turning out to be okay or even pretty good. I think what it is a lot of these people need to take out the time to make adjustments to these characters, or there needs to be time for these characters to get proper weapons, proper artifact sets, a new character to synergize with them, whatever the case is. I'm playing Genshin Impact with a long long-term mindset, and I'm not strictly judging things based on the here and now, unlike a lot of other people. I think that's probably the biggest reason why I won't see eye to eye with a lot of people. To wrap up everything in the video, I do want to briefly mention the content creators that push a must pull, must skip narrative and try to peer pressure people into doing things one way or another. I will never make this argument in the terms of Genshin, just simply based on the fact that there's so much more criteria that is involved on a per person basis to tell them what's a must pull and must skip. I've got to look at that. Me personally, I would have to look at that person's account. I would have to know what their general goals are, and I would see what they're working with, and maybe either help them enhance on their strengths that they already like or help cover them for weaknesses. What I would recommend to one person, I'm not going to recommend to somebody else. For example, if somebody plays on mobile and they have really bad ping issues, I'm probably going to recommend that they get Zhongli, because Zhongli is a very good comfort pick for mobile players. But I wouldn't inherently push that character the same way if somebody was playing on console or on PC and they didn't have any type of ping issues or lag issues or anything along those lines. At the end of the day, it goes back to that saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure. If somebody tried to tell me not to pull for a character, I'm not going to listen to their rhetoric, because I will make that decision and determine if that character is going to be somebody that I can vibe with and they fit into my roster or not. If you have taken out the time to listen to this or watch this, just want to say thank you for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.